I've been nicked at Arsenal, nicked at West Brom, nicked at Liverpool. I should have gone to prison. You've come 200 miles to do me with a wooden mallet. Shoot me at least, have a bit of respect. Is it going to be the football or the politics? Football's going to win every time. You can go and get help with a drink problem, drug problem. Would I go and get help for my problem, which is being a football hooligan? And my natural instinct was to fucking get up and go, who's done that? Of course, as I'd done it, the machine gun was on the old back of the head, and I thought, well, maybe not. It's not exactly equal, is it? We're throwing a few punches, they're blowing us up. How much training do you need to walk in a bank with a gun and say, give us the money? You know, you pull the trigger, the chances are there's a bullet going to come out the other end, isn't it? I've got no doubt if I lived in Belfast, I'd have either been doing life or I'd have been dead. Frank, do you feel like you was radicalised? No. I was doing the radicalising. I was now a loyalist prisoner. Now, in that world, that is a massive badge of honour. And there was a bloke there marching round on his own. It turned out to be Charlie Bronson. And she asked me a really awkward question. You know, she said, are you telling me you'd have killed somebody? And to this day, I don't think I ever answered.
Welcome back to the Criminal Connection podcast, and this episode is proudly brought to you by Betovo. Welcome back to the Criminal Connection podcast. My name's Terry Stone, aka the Podfather. Today we've got a notorious Tottenham football hooligan called Frank Portinari. He was a loyalist and a paramilitary fella that got himself into a bit of bother. He's written a book, which is amazing. You must read it. I've got it here. Didn't actually recognise you without the balaclava. I was going to wear mine today, but I didn't think it was going to be appropriate. But I just want to welcome Frank. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Frank.
Really thank you, Terry. Appreciate the invitation very much. Thank you.
So, Frank, obviously read your book and fascinating story, and really just wanted to go into, you know, where you was born, where you grew up, and you know, how you sort of got pulled into football. I was never into football as a kid because my dad never took me. But was it all started from, you know, growing up and your dad took you, or? Well,
now you've said that, what was his reasons for not taking you? Was he just not interested?
He was just too busy in the pub drinking.
Oh, okay, well that's fair enough. No, because I do kind of address what I've done previously as well.
Right.
And I have sort of qualified it by saying if someone ever said to me, well, I couldn't go to football because my dad wouldn't let me because of people like you, i.e. me,
right?
I wouldn't feel particularly good about that, you know, because that wasn't the intent at the time. But I can appreciate it probably did stop some fellas being able to go to football.
Right.
Yeah, I was just your normal football supporter. I played football. I've always lived in Camden. In North London. I do make a point of telling people that Camden wasn't Camden until 1966.
Well, what was it before then?
It was made up of 3 boroughs. It was made up of Hampstead, which was very, very posh, I suppose, you know. And you were in the middle, you had St Pancras.
Right.
And that was a very, very rough area because there was a lot of flats, you know, a lot of tenements. And you had the 3 stations, Euston, right, King's Cross, St Pancras. So you had, itinerant workers coming from all over. That caused tensions. There's been ethnic changes over the years as well that's done that. And then to the south of the borough, you had all around like Hatton Garden, right, Holborn. So again, that was quite an affluent area. So yeah, St Pancras was a pretty tough area, very, working class. And my mum, bless her, sent me to school there. Thanks for that, Mum.
Right.
She sent me to the school because it was called Sir William Collins. She thought it was posh. And it was, you know the sort of school you fall out with someone and they got 4 brothers and 15 cousins.
Right.
And they tend to wait for you after school.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I grew up with a lot of them as well and drank around there when I was old enough to drink. Right. So yeah, but currently still in Kentish Town. Yeah.
Right. So you grew up in Camden, and was your father a Tottenham supporter?
No, he buggered off when I was about 2.
Right,
he probably see what was coming where Tottenham was concerned. No, bless him. Listen, they split up when I was about 2, and I only met him once.
Right.
And my understanding was he left London because he didn't want to confuse me growing up, wondering why, he wasn't living under the same roof, so to speak. And I respect him for that.
Right.
And I've met 2 brothers from his second marriage, and we all get on great.
Yeah.
So it was just local kids. We all still lived in houses with, outside toilets.
Right.
Tin.
Good old days.
Yeah, well, yeah, tin bark on
there was
the
no
nail.
B-days then, was there?
You wasn't sure where you was in the queue when it came to using the water. A lot of time you got into it, there was that much scum on the top of the water,
Right.
but we also had the good old days, didn't we?
Yeah.
So all we really could do was play football in the street, and there was less cars.
Right.
Less cars in those days, and you played from one side of the road to the other. The gable walls were the goals. You chalked the goals up. And then, of course, eventually you aspire to go and watch your heroes. Most people in our street were Tottenham supporters, the dads, the uncles. I suspect that's because from when they done the double in 60-61.
Right.
So it kind of followed through the 60s. They won the Cup again, Cup Winners' Cup. You've always got a Man United fan, ain't you? There was a Man United fan in the street. I say to people, if you was, on a desert island, the first bloke you'd meet would be a Man United fan. They're all over the place, So he was okay. But eventually I did get to go to a football match, and that was easier said than done because you had to have the money to go in the first place. And crowds were massive. Because there wasn't so many seats. So it was 50-odd thousand every home game.
Wow.
And a lot of the bigger clubs would bring quite a substantial amount of support as well, So sometimes you could get over at midday and still not get in. But I definitely got the bug. I got the bug, the atmosphere, seeing your heroes in real life as opposed to a poster, on your bedroom wall. And of course, there wasn't so much television in those days. It wasn't, like the saturation we get of football now. It wasn't like that. So to go and see your heroes was a really big thing,
What was it? Because I know obviously like West Ham have that Forever Blowing Bubbles song.
Yeah.
What was the Tottenham song?
I would imagine back then it would have been Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, which now sort of gets converted to, Glory, Glory, Tottenham Hotspur.
Right, got it.
So that would have been the song that they would have been most identified. McNamara, there's a version of McNamara's Band as well, which is quite a traditional song. But yeah, they were great times, and as I say, I definitely got the bug. And even now, the new stadium, as lovely as it is, all my memories are in the old stadium. Albeit it's on the same plot.
Yeah.
But that's where all my night games and European games.
We used to do a club right near the old Tottenham ground called Club UN on the Tottenham High Road.
Oh, all right.
Tottenham was always a bit like the Wild West, It was there's always a lot of action, man. There.
It's definitely lively. There's no doubt about that.
Right, it was lively.
Yeah, and then as I say, I was a genuine football supporter. And
did you have the T-shirt and the hat and the scarf?
You couldn't afford that then, no.
So okay, because I know a lot of people that are really passionate about football. I don't know what they call them, but they got a name for them, ain't they? The people that wear the shirts and the hats and the scarves.
Well, in Europe it's ultras now, isn't it?
Right.
That's the thing. They're just ordinary football fans. And I would have been an ordinary football fan, and the only thing is that I probably did at some stage. I did have a scarf. I did have it probably was about, I don't know, £1, was it, or something. Right. But I certainly wouldn't have had a football shirt. In fact, I went to school and my pride and joy was a pair of Tottenham socks.
Right.
And that's how poor we were,
Yeah.
But, and that actually caused my first fight in school over a pair of football socks.
I take it was a Man United fan.
No, I wasn't an aggressive kid. And one day in the dressing room, they were rolled up together and someone decided to throw it to the next kid and the next kid. And for want of a better way of putting it, silly bollocks was running round trying to catch the socks. And I eventually caught the kid who had them, but I caught him round the neck and I had him on the floor and I got the socks back. And of course, this kid, I'd never actually ever seen him have a fight, but he was one of them kids who always looked smart, the smartest kid in the class, sounded smart. And of course, he said, what he was going to do after school, he was going to kill me. And, what mates I had said, don't leave by the back gate or don't do this, he'll be waiting. And eventually I thought, well, even if he hits me, how long can it hurt for? Now they'd probably stab you, but
Right.
Back then it would have been a punch, And I stood there and he had a lot of verbal, and it suddenly dawned on me, well, he's not exactly got round to hitting me, has he? And I just thought him for a penny, and I'll give him a dig, and he went down. And I genuinely don't know who was more shocked, me, him, or everybody else. And of course, the next day, I got invited to youth clubs. I got invited to a party at the weekend. I suddenly realised that one incident had changed, my relationship in that school. Mind you, I do say this, over the next few weeks, everyone in the years above put it on me, because I was seen as a new challenger, and that didn't turn out very well for me. I don't think I won another fight for a few months, you know what I mean? But it did teach me one thing, and that was, why would I ever back down? There's probably times I should have, but that's what it taught me. Well, you stood up for yourself once, so let's do it again. But the football, say, which is straightforward football fan, and then you always have an incident where you witness some violence, and probably get caught up in it. And at one stage, I did get caught up in it, and because it was at Stoke City away, and because I didn't run, well, my logic was, if you run, you get tripped up, you're in more trouble. So I stood, and I didn't actually hit anybody. In fact, I probably got hit. But the following week in the pub in Tottenham, so I was about 16, somebody said, "Oh, well done, mate. I see you up in Stoke last week. You stood your ground." I suddenly realised what a little bit of respect was. And I think that was the start of it. I think that's where I started.
So that's when you popped your cherry.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the most, I didn't exactly hit anyone, but it was just that concept. I mean, if that says to people, I mean, I say to this day, I wouldn't tell them probably, but I've probably got mates who, knock the shit out of me. But I'm never going to tell them that.
Right.
But what they do know is, if they want someone to be with them who's not going to back off, then they'd call on me to do that. So that's what I discovered. And then, of course, leadership comes from that, and all other kinds of.
Yeah. Well, I think also as well, growing up in the working classes, not having any money, and probably having, a pretty shit upbringing, and then getting that little bit of respect.
Yeah.
Lots of people I know, they're all looking for, especially, if you haven't got a father, they're looking for that sort of thing that they can belong to. Like a family, it's like, come in here and then all of a sudden...
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, that was exactly it. I worked with older blokes, so there was a lot of influences from them as well. If I pleased them, so to speak, it pleased me.
Right.
It wasn't a bad idea to have older, bigger blokes, surrounding you as well. But yeah, it's identifiable now because I didn't have a dad. I was always in and out of other mates' houses,
right,
and their dads tended to treat me like one of their own.
Right.
I mean, I did get a dad eventually. I did get a stepdad eventually, and I tried to pay respect to him. I say, look, it wasn't me, it was me mum, wasn't it? He just fucking inherited me, didn't he? Bless him. And he eventually went on to have a lot of mental health problems. He had schizophrenia, and he just scared the life out of me. So that was another reason why I was always out on the street. Yeah. I just couldn't bear to be indoors or wrap around him.
Was that? I mean, I know with mental health and stuff now, it's not as there are people a lot more tuned into stuff now. Yeah. Was they tuned into that then, or
no?
Oh right, okay. So he was literally just
It's a horrible thing to say. I remember when he had a nervous breakdown, and he went into Free and Barnet. Then he came out, and then my mum had to go away with a nervous breakdown. I think she was in a place called Hallowick. And me and my sister were put into a home briefly, and it was suggested that I go and speak to a doctor. And being ignorant, I just went, well, I'm not fucking mad. So you're calling your own mum and dad mad, basically. Yeah. That's not how I meant it, but that was the ignorance of the day. If you were in one of those places, you were just mad. was almost like you just nutted off, you know. But yeah, you're right. We've obviously all got a better understanding of it.
And what with the schizophrenia, what sort of things did he do? Would he talk to himself, or would he like be violent? Or?
Yeah, he was a very strange man because he was, in the sense that he wasn't educated, but he could strip a car of its engine and a gearbox, and I'd be fascinated because you couldn't write a letter, and you think, well, how can you strip that car and yet put it all back together, albeit with new parts and so on. So he did have skills. He did have certain, you know, streetwise skills. But academically, he probably smoked since he was about 9 years of age, that kind of, you know, upbringing. But no, he'd do things like he'd say he'd walk through a graveyard and he'd seen people with, you know, red eyes, and it's just to freak me out. I wasn't necessarily worried about him.
Do you think
violently?
Do you think he was, because my dad just did things out of me, but I think he was just winding me up. Or do you think he genuinely?
Well, only because he got treatment eventually. I'm inclined. Funny enough, it might sound a bit cynical. I do think he played on it at times.
Right.
I think he wound my mother up.
Right.
At different times, because he had that as a fallback.
Right.
Situation, you know, he could almost turn around, take a liberty, and then say, "Well, what would you expect? I'm mad." You know what I mean?
I'm going to try that one.
Yeah, well, I think my wife discovered that already. Yeah,
did that with the missus. When she goes, "Why you been like that?" I go, "Sorry, but I think I might be going a bit mad."
Yeah, but and I recognise that now.
Right.
But yeah, so it was a childhood out on the street. Quite a lot of the time spent on the street, and certainly towards older men. Right. And then I picked up some of their habits, some of their traits. Certainly drinking. You know, in your early teens, and you're drinking with older men. A good education. In a way, a good education, though. A good streetwise education, I think.
And them guys know how to drink as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did get a shock one day. They said to me there were 4 brothers that I worked with, and I knew they were pretty notorious. They came from an area called Somers Town, which is on top of St Pancras Station. And they said, "Oh, Frank, you ain't got anywhere you could stick a bag for us, could you?" And I at that time I lived in 2 rooms. I had 2 rooms and an attic. And I said, yeah. And it wasn't actually a bag; it was a Hessian sack.
Right.
And they dropped it off. I think I was about 16. Of course, you're nosy, ain't you? You look in the bag. Of course, there were sawn-offs and handguns, koshes and balaclavas. I can remember this day standing in front of my wardrobe, the mirror, with a sawn-off. Like, I don't know who the fuck I thought I was.
I reckon you was Robert De Niro and Taxi Driver.
I probably couldn't even pull the trigger, you know. But I remember being this curious 16-year-old with this gun. And what they'd do is I'd go round to a local pub on a Friday, and they'd suddenly turn up, suited and booted, and all my little mates would go, "Oh, who's this?" You know, and they'd say, "What are you having, Frank?" And I'll say, "Oh, I'll have a rum and black."
Right.
And it'd be, "Get Frank, I'll have a rum and black." And then I'd go out, I'd get in the car, we'd go and get the bag, and they'd give me a score, and that was a lot of money, you know. And they'd come drop me off, and they'd get me another drink, and they'd get my mates a drink. So all my mates were impressed. So I probably didn't even realise at that age that I was actually breaking the law.
How old was you then?
16.
Yeah, wow.
So I just thought I was doing, people that were good to me and had accepted me, they'd asked me to do them a favour, and I was doing them a favour. I had no idea what the consequences would have been.
Did you do that Taxi Driver film with the sawn-off? Talking to me?
Yeah. I probably was talking to myself. I probably said something like stupid, like hand over the money or something. Oh, don't make me look any worse than I am.
But yes, so I suppose really from 16, you was at the football, you know, you was getting a little bit of respect, you had a few fights. Obviously, you know, people started to, you know, trust you to do, like you said, criminal activities that you wouldn't necessarily, you know.
It is quite strange. It's a bit of a contradiction, really, because I remember I'd met my wife now, my girl when we was 15. And as I was got to like 17, 18, 19, I realised I was getting involved in some pretty heavy stuff. And I had the common sense to make the conscientious decision, I'm not going to do this, because I don't want to be sitting in a restaurant one night or be in a pub and a firm come in looking for me and she might get hurt as a result of it. And yet, years later, I did far worse. I did far much, far worse.
I think, because normally as you get older, you get more sensible and more, what's the word? You think things through more. But I think at the time, maybe it was just youth, you're sort of doing this thinking, oh, I'm aware of this now. Maybe I won't, go down that path. And then what was the point, that then you sort of ended up getting pulled back in? Was it at the football? Was you?
Probably, because the normal thing was every Saturday and every Wednesday, it was either home or away.
Right.
So that tended to use up my time. And that group of friends, who were my own age, don't forget, I eventually did meet older fellas as well. But a very good friend of mine, Bill from Somers Town, I never realised he was about 5 years older than me. I knew he was a man and I was a boy, so to speak. And basically, if he said we were doing something, then Bill had a lovely 3.5 Rover Coupe, tinted windows, and Bill says he was coming to pick you up. You go out for a drive. You went for a drive. You just, leather seats and that, And and the same at the football. He said, Frankie, we're going through their turnstile. All right, Bill. Didn't think what was going to happen when you got to the other side of the turnstiles, And then you prayed everybody else that had said they were going to follow you in, that they actually came in, and that wasn't always the case. Sometimes there'd be someone twice the size of you, been mouthing off all morning. And when it came to the crunch, they never went through the turnstile.
It's in the toilet.
But you learnt then. But they didn't even get in the ground.
Right.
So you learn. So that gave me respect for other people as well. Particularly in Bill, but others as well.
And at the time. Obviously, with the West Ham lot, they were called the Inner City Firm.
Yeah.
Was the Tottenham? Did they have a name, or were they just?
Well, back in those days, in the early 70s, it tended to be whatever was the popular end of the ground, wherever you stood behind the goal. It did change at different times, and the police sometimes changed that because for segregation reasons eventually. So we probably would have just been known as we were the Park Lane end.
Right.
Because that was the end of the ground. That was the name of the street, Park Lane.
So you was like the Park Lane?
We were the Park Lane. We were the Park Lane. You'd be called the Park Lane.
And obviously, I remember 70s and the 80s, the football violence was everywhere. And I remember, it was organised as well. You'd have different firms meeting up and having tear-ups.
I'd say that was more the 80s. In the 70s, it was very much hundreds onto hundreds.
Right.
It was hundreds onto hundreds. And I always say this, as you was punching someone, you was probably getting punched in the back of the head or side of the head. Did
they organise meet-ups? So they said, right, you lot, come down here?
No.
You just collided and that was it?
It wasn't like that then. You as you approached that stadium, they would wait. Just people would be waiting in the side streets and up north, the little terraced houses, they'd be in the alleyways, and sometimes you were ambushed. But you generally knew the rules of engagement. The nearer you got to the ground, it's going to kick off in a minute. And it was hundreds onto hundreds. When it got into the 80s, that's when it did become, because the police technology got better for a start. And it did get more, and everything changed. The clothing changed, obviously music changes, every generation.
What was it? Was it Burberry and Stone Island, wasn't it?
In my day, I thought I was posh because I had a donkey jacket.
Or Fred Perry.
That was a thing in our day, was a cancelled donkey jacket. Now people are spending hundreds of pounds and risking getting their Stone Island slashed up. Well, right. You got your donkey jacket slashed up, you went round a Camden Council or Acne Council. You got a new one, you didn't bother. No, there probably was an element of being fascist, fashion conscious, but I won't forget my two little Millwall mates I used to work with, and one of them turned around to the other one and said, "What are you wearing to football Saturday, Dave?" And I went, "What? You pair of tarts, you're having a conversation about what you're going to wear to football?" I just couldn't believe it. But that wasn't my generation, in all fairness. It wasn't, respect to the fellas who refer to themselves as casuals and the whole bit, the music, I get it, I definitely get it. But in my generation was late 60s, early 70s.
Right.
and there wasn't a lot of money about, to be quite honest. And in the early 70s, we all had, skinheads had gone at the late 60s, early 70s, and then long hair came in. So I remember wearing tank tops.
Imagine that now, we'd be, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I think we're old Bill.
So you know, undercover,
you
over there,
had tank tops, and you had baggy trousers and big-heeled shoes. I mean, I look back at those photos and I think, God knows how we walked about dressed like that.
But I bet at the time he was in front of the mirror saying, I look the bollocks.
Well, yeah. And then you had things like Farrah's came in. Do you remember? I don't know how old you are, Terry. Do you remember like Farrah's came in?
I'm 52 now. But I remember with a little F on the...
Yeah, you had Farrah's. You had to have all the different colour Farrah's. And then it all got sporty, didn't it? It got all the feeler and all that kind of tennis stuff.
Yeah.
Then golf stuff came in, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I suppose I did change, but certainly I was more worried about going having a pint and having a punch up than what I was about how I looked on the day, you know.
So it was football, alcohol, violence, the fashion.
Yeah, I went big on fashion. I wasn't big on fashion. This is a Hackett jacket now. I've caught up.
Oh yeah,
caught up.
and then you know, out of all the places where you had, you know, altercations with other football hooligans, who would you say were the strong firms at the time?
Well, I think anywhere you went up north for a start, because it wasn't the done thing to go up north. I mean, one, it was a long way, you know, and having the money to go, you tended to not be organised, and there'd be hundreds of people, you know, northerners waiting for you. Right. And, you know, Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, Leeds, you know, big industrial towns, you know, tough blokes.
Right.
So you did take your life in your hands. And I always say, you know, someone would say, you never went to Newcastle on Wednesday night, did you? And I go, yeah. But that's me being blasé though about it. But it was dangerous. So any of those you could have included, and there was less segregation. So people could get at you. So there was no
I mean, now when you watch it, there's all the stewards and there's all fences. Then it was just like a free-for-all.
Oh, you know, you might get in your designated end of the ground, but that hadn't stopped some of their supporters getting into that end of the ground as well. So it's quite dangerous. It was quite dangerous. And every dog has their day. I mean, I can remember places in the Midlands that were tough, very tough as well. So I suppose if I focused on London, I'm honest enough to say this now, that the late 60s, early 70s, and I don't think people give them credit, Arsenal had a naughty mob of fellas, you know, and it changes, because I can remember when Tottenham eclipsed Arsenal, so to speak, and we would regularly go in their end of the ground and, you know, take the piss, really, if I'm honest, looking back at it. And then they had their day again later on in the 80s and the 90s. But I suppose for consistency, I'm always honest enough to say probably West Ham. I think West Ham, because what they're always attributed with is being organised. They did seem to always be organised. I mean, Millwall, I would say, would always have to get a mention, but we didn't play Millwall very often because we weren't in the same division. You might meet occasionally on the underground, but it wasn't until, blimey, when was it, 77, 78, that we actually played Millwall at the Den, and that's some of the worst violence I've ever seen. Probably the worst violence, I would say, in England that I've seen.
Was that on the Tottenham side or the Millwall side? Was it
both?
Just literally everybody killing each other?
There'd been a documentary before it, and it had kind of built it all up. It kind of built it up, this occasion. And I actually, this chap Bill I mentioned, I'd been to a party, Christmas Day party, till 5 a.m, and it was like a midday kickoff, and I thought, no one's going to go. They'll all make excuses. And 8 o'clock in the morning, he came, and I mean, no bells in them days. It was an old knocker, wasn't it, on the door, and he come and bang, bang, bang. Oh, you know. And there he was. He'd nicked the works van outside. It had all shovels and pickaxes and God knows what. And he said, we're going down the old Kent Road, Canterbury Arms, and we're going to have a go at Millwall. I said, who do you mean we? I said, where's everyone else? It was only me and him at that point. None of the local fellas who said they were going actually turned up. And then we went down to some other places, Old Street, Oxton, and picked other people up. But we went too near London Bridge, where everybody else was meeting. At the old Bill quickly fucking grabbed hold of us and slung us on the train. But after the game, it was crazy. I see a fella put a screwdriver at someone's cheek, and they were kicking down walls, throwing bricks at each other, wooden fencing, and there was even railings, and they got the rails and were throwing them like spears. And I thought, I make no bones about it. I think we gave a really good account of ourselves, but I was glad to get back home and get in the pub, to be honest.
It sounds like a fucking Zulu film.
It's the worst. It's definitely the worst. And I've seen some mad ones over the years, right. But I would say that was probably, as somebody didn't die that day, I'm genuinely shocked they didn't.
And that was Millwall versus Tottenham. When was that?
I'm sure it was. Well, we got relegated in '77, so we'd have played them in '78. It would have been Boxing Day. But I think they're a very tight knit. Like Bermondsey, New Cross, Peckham, and so they're a very tight knit community. And I think even to this day they were probably, what we'd call a firm now. It'd be mob then, but they would probably bring have a tidy little firm, I would imagine. But no, West Ham, I'd have to say West Ham. They always kind of had it over us psychologically. There was a period we used to have it over Arsenal psychologically, and then one day it changes. And when you expect people to run and they don't run, you then start looking, well, how many of you is there? And who's going to stand? And you've not had to do that before, have you?
Right.
You've just taken it for granted. So we've had our times with West Ham, but I think consistently over a lot of years, I'd probably have to credit West Ham. But you could say Manchester United used to have thousands of supporters. They weren't called the Red Army for nothing.
Right.
Because they had fans from all over the country.
Manchester and Liverpool, both crazy places, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, of course, and you have to respect that. And when when we used to go to Liverpool, especially the period where they used to carry Stanley knives. I can remember in the 70s, and they used to nick your sheepskins.
Right.
That's what they used to like to do. Was if they couldn't get it off your back, they'd cut it up. They'd cut it on your back. Wow. Definitely a naughty place. But, as I say, you have a good day and you have a bad. I've been very fortunate. I've only ever been concussed once, and that's because I took a liberty and went to the toilets after being where I shouldn't have been, and people saw me go to the toilets, and that was at Tottenham, and we'd played Arsenal, and we were playing Arsenal. They went to go into the stadium. We had a big fight outside. We followed them in. Another fight took place. Police threw all the Tottenham fans out, except me. Thought I was being smart. I went, I like that. And they went, all right, cop. I went, you all right, mate? I went, them Tottenham bastards. I said, they've just given me a dig and all that. And I went to the toilet. Well, of course, these Arsenal fellas saw me do it. And I woke up in a cubicle. One minute I'm at a urinal, next minute I'm in a cubicle. And I joke about it now, but I genuinely went like that to make sure I had my ears in case one of them had took it as a trophy,
Is that one of the things they did take
No,
years?
No, it's just my vivid imagination at the
the reason
time, but I thought it was
is
possible.
Because there was a movie where, I can't remember which film it was, but one of the characters had a necklace with people's ears on it. So when you said that, I thought maybe that was
a trend.
Maybe that was an Arsenal thing, I don't know.
Yeah. So that was, I landed up having to go to St John's Ambulance. They took me to I had to go to North Middlesex Hospital. But after waiting a couple of hours to see a doctor, I went, I'm getting a cab on going home. Yeah, so I had me fair. I mean, I was quite lucky. I didn't do any bird over it. I didn't get any prison over it. I'd been nicked at Tottenham against Arsenal. I'd been nicked at Arsenal. I'd been nicked at West Brom. I'd been nicked at Liverpool. And I should have gone to prison with the Liverpool one because I'd been nicked previously over Arsenal, and I got a year. I got a month. Tell a lie. I got a month suspended for a year, and I got £100 fine. And I remember the judge saying to me, "How do you intend paying?" I said, "Well, I'm a bit short at the moment, Gabby. Been 28 days." I felt like saying, "Why'd you f***ing ask?" You know what I mean? What's the point of asking me? Anyway, I was very, very lucky. It was 2 days before the day I went to court. It was my birthday, right. So at least I went to go home. And of course, I went to Liverpool, and I got nicked up there. Right. So I thought, if I get guilty here, I'm going to get the month at least, and then whatever they. But the 2 old bills stood in the dock, and they both read from their notebooks and said, the accused was seen run across the road and said, "I'll kill you, you f***ing scouse twat." And I've never used that word in my life. And I noticed one of the 3 judges, the woman, saw my reaction. Right. So when we had half time, I said to my barrister, "Well, you ain't done a lot of good, have you?" And he went, "Well, don't worry. So when we go back in, you'll get a chance to talk." And I remember giving my mate my raincoat, my watch, my wallet. Just in case. Thought, I'll get out of the way here. And when I got back in, I said, "Excuse me, Your Honours." I said, "I've lived in London all my life. I know a fair bit about London culture." I said, "I've never used that word twat." And, I said, "Yeah, they've just quoted that in their notebooks. Case dismissed."
It does sound like a weird thing to say.
So I say to people, if you get nicked in Liverpool now, keep saying twat, twat, twat as many times as you can, and then deny it.
That's your get out of jail. Sorry, that's a get out of jail free when you're in Liverpool card.
That's the only good advice I can give you. Yeah, just say twat and then deny it.
Yeah. I mean, when you went to the football, what would you normally carry on you? Did you have a standing rifle?
No, never.
So you just never went to all that?
No, it's not my thing. It's just not. I don't know how someone gets up in the morning and makes a conscious decision to take a tool with them. Personally, I think unless you're a coward, because if you may well be doing it for your own personal protection. If you go into a tough place, you might think, "Oh, that they carry standing knives." I kind of get that, but that wasn't for me. And the only time I ever used a tool, and I didn't mess about because it was a shovel, so at least it was a big tool. Yeah. And that was purely by chance, because a few of us had gone to Queen's Park Rangers, who we had very little respect for. And there was only a dozen of us. We was walking down the road, and some young black fellas come round the corner, and they were all sort of like from Latimer Road, Ladbroke Grove, off the estates. And our attitude was kind of like, "Oh, f*** off," like, we are, sort of. And the old tools come out, didn't they? And then another load of them come round the corner, and we suddenly, "Well, we're in trouble here." And more luck than judgment, there was a skip outside a house and a pile of sand, and there was a shovel in the sand. And I thought, that's mine. I'm having that. And I remember Desert Boots had just made a comeback, and I was running down the road, and they was going, "Go on, Rummel," like Rummel of the desert, like, because of the sand. Fortunately, a police horse come round the corner and kind of scattered everybody. So I didn't actually hit anyone with the shovel, but it was enough to keep those who had tools away from the rest of us who didn't have anything, So, but no, I wouldn't consciously do that. I didn't. Yeah, I went to football to win a fight, but us to win and you to lose, but not for me to come and disfigure you or.
Because I know there was a big thing where people would carry knives, Stanley blades,
craft knives, little thin craft knives. Some people used to take ammonia in jiffy bottles.
That as well, CS gas.
That? Yeah.
Another thing somebody said was they get a newspaper. They fold
you bend it over,
yeah.
And that hurts.
That, yeah.
Oh, you get it on here, but that does hurt. Well, you think about it, it's wood, isn't it? Paper's only wood.
Yeah.
But no, I've seen it where people have had axes. I've seen it. I remember my mate Bill chasing St Geordie's down Eversholt Street outside Euston Station, with an axe. I've seen axes being used at Liverpool Street, Euston Station, Wembley. But there's a newspaper report somewhere of, I think it was a Liverpool. Yeah, it was a Liverpool fan. He got an axe in the back when Tottenham played at Wembley. But the worst I've ever seen is in Europe, which was Rotterdam, which was finalled. We'd had previous years before that with them, and we don't ask me why, but I think there was about 80 of us, and we decided to go into their popular end And it was great to start off with because we shocked them, we scattered them. And then I think they realised that there was only that amount. And I had an umbrella. So I thought I was like old John Steed at the Avengers, like I was all right. And I'm not making this up, and it is in the book, and I've said it previously. There was suddenly a mad surge, which probably saved a lot of people's lives because you could only go downwards and into the wall and then onto the pitch. They've done us a favour. You can actually go on YouTube and you can see it.
So there's actually a YouTube video of this?
Of it. You'll see all the Tottenham fans getting pushed down. But as they were getting pushed down, where you thought you was getting punched in the side or the back, you was actually being stabbed.
Wow. And
I've got mates who didn't know till they was on the pitch. They kind of went, what's that? Is that beer or whatever? And then they realised it was blood. But there was 2 blokes making their way towards me, and one had an axe and one had a sword, which made my umbrella look a little bit pathetic. So
time to go, yeah.
The surge done me a favour because it pushed me down, and you were so busy trying to keep your balance and not go down that as soon as you hit the wall at the bottom, you was up onto the pitch. And so that's probably the worst I've seen because I've never seen so many blades. And it was, I'm outside, I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean,
I know a few people who not necessarily footballers, but people that have gone to football, in Europe, and they've said they've seen some terrible things where someone's just standing in a bar and they're obviously not from wherever it is, the ultras, whether it's and they just walk up to them and just stick a glass in their face.
Well, we taught them, didn't we? See, the trouble is they called it the English disease, didn't they? And they just were very late catching up. And I mean, on that game, they found a bomb, a homemade bomb, in the left luggage compartment that was meant for us.
Wow.
The police found that before the game, thank God. But
I mean, you don't really think about going to a football match and getting blown up.
Well, no, but then again, you see, people get, this is the trouble, people get more and more extreme. They want to win, they don't want to lose. They want a reputation, and I've understood that over the years, far more now than what I did back then, probably. So.
And you've obviously gone through this crazy sort of, going out every Saturday and every Wednesday and having a fight or being bombed or stabbed.
Well, don't forget, it spilled into pubs as well. You went in certain pubs just because it was a Tuesday. If they were Arsenal, we're Tottenham, because that's the closest where I live. Or you went to a disco in the 70s, or then as you got older, you went to a nightclub or a music venue. You didn't say, oh, we're not playing you today, so we won't have a fight with each other.
Right.
You still had a fight with each other. I'm trying to think of what it was.
So you switched on. If you was a supporter and they knew you could go off any time.
I remember going down the Lyceum. You remember the old Lyceum down the West End?
Yeah. And,
you'd have West Ham, Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, Millwall. It'd be murders, absolute murders. So, yeah, it was I used to look at it as a 7-day-a-week pursuit, if you like. And I can't lie and say I didn't enjoy it, because I did. It's like a drug. It's like an absolute drug.
I mean, obviously, people that are watching this are obviously be into, or listening to it, are be into true crime or football hooligans or, violence. But for the people that aren't, that are just interested in the subject matter, what do you think it was that just enticed you back? Was it the buzz? Was it adrenaline? Was it the camaraderie? What was it?
I think it's a bit of all of that. I mean, someone says, and I'll give him a bit of credit, Jason Marad, he's known over Chelsea. He's living out in Thailand now. He's the first one I heard him say, you can go and get help with a drink problem, drug problem, gambling problem. He said, where do I go and get a problem? Where do I go and get help for my problem? Which is being a football hooligan. Because it is the buzz. It's the great unknown. You do not know.
I've just had a really good idea. I want to say a huge thanks to our sponsors, Fragrance du Bois. Now, for those of you that don't know about Fragrance du Bois, where have you been? It is one of the leading luxury fragrances, only available in Harrods, Selfridges and Neiman Marcus in New York. They've got so many different fragrances for men, for women, All of the fragrances are unisex, so make sure you get involved and sample the delights of fragrance de bois. For all the Criminal Connection podcast crew, we've got a special discount for you. 10% off. All you need to do when you click on the link below and choose your luxury fragrance is to put in CCPOD10 for the 10% discount. Why don't we set up Football Hooligans Anonymous to help football hooligans deal with their violent urges?
Oh, you heard it here first. But I understand what he meant. I did understand. Look, if, you've probably had rows with your girlfriend, your wife, your parents, you're that determined to go. There's an element of, if certain faces, if you've got a tough game, away game, and certain faces are going, a lot more people will go if they know those faces are going.
Right.
So it almost becomes a responsibility as well.
Right, so you are like a firm.
Yeah.
So, it's going, we'll all go.
So there is an element of respect. There's certainly an element of kudos. And yeah, I don't do drugs. I've never done drugs. I like a drink, so I can't really compare it to drugs, but it's the nearest that I can think of. The adrenaline, the excitement, the buzz of getting on that coach, because sometimes we'd get our own coach. Some games we'd chartered a plane to, European games. We've sailed on disco boats, pre-season friendlies. I actually feel sorry for this generation because I feel like we were like the pioneers. Right. It was all new to us.
Yeah.
It was all new, whereas now it's so accessible, it's so easy. Just get on a plane or...
And I suppose also now that, you can subscribe to it, can't you, and watch it on TV. And there's probably a lot of people that, I'd hate to say this because I'm a big boxing fan, so I like going to a real boxing fight.
Yeah.
But some people do only watch this stuff on TV. And I think that kind of...
Well, I can appreciate, as over the years, I met a lot of villains over the years, and the ages thought it was completely muggy. That was their term,
Right.
That's muggy, that. You ain't earning a pound note out of that. You're spending money. All right, some elements learn how to break, jewellery shop windows on their travels and nick a load of sports gear, on their travels, especially in Europe. I mean, the Scousers and the Manx were very good at doing that. But I can see it from their point of view. You're not earning any money out of it. It's a bit muggy, isn't it, really?
I suppose it's that thing, isn't it? It's if you're a football hooligan, you're so passionate about your game, and you're fighting for your team. You're not really thinking I'm going to go out and commit a crime, or I'm going to go and sell drugs, or I'm going to go. It's not a money making thing. It's more of an extreme.
And again, you don't realise you're breaking the law, but you clearly are breaking the law. I mean, there's laws to prevent it.
Do you think like that? If you're really passionate about something, you become an extreme fan because I remember going. I've never really been into football, and I'll be honest with you, but I've watched it, and I've been to loads of football matches that friends have invited me to be their plus ones or in a box or whatever. And I've always enjoyed going. I've always thought it's fun. But whenever they lose and you see like grown men crying and people just like devastated by it, I just don't get it. I'm sort of like, but you would, because obviously...
I couldn't, look, I've got a local pub and we've got all different ages in there and there's some great characters in there. And I go in there as much for the characters as what I do for the drink, if I'm honest. And the amount of people that asked me last week, will I be in the pub yesterday, Sunday? It's Arsenal and Tottenham. And I said, no way. There's no way I'm coming in this pub watching this. Because I will fall out with somebody. I won't mean it. An hour after I've fallen out with them, I'll regret it. But I know... I'll know the 50 and 60-year-olds in there, we just take the piss out of each other and we'll all get on and have a laugh and a joke. Because we've burnt ourselves out now. We know what it's like. But there'll be a 30-year-old kid there who's probably never been involved in any violence of football, but he's with his mates, he's got his colours on, and he's going to shout out something derogatory about my team, and I'm going to get the hump. Because I'm going to take that personal. I think he's having a go at me, this geezer. But he's not, is he? He's just having a go at my team. So I make a conscious decision, don't go. Don't put yourself in that environment. So tonight I can walk in there, shake hands. It was a draw anyway, so I can walk in there and laugh about it. But I couldn't have done that once upon a time. I couldn't have done that. But I always say with that game, there's the three I's. I'm immature, I'm irrational, and irresponsible.
So don't fucking mug me off.
Just stay out of the way. And I'm scared of my wife.
But was you scared of her back in the day or not? Or are you more scared of her now?
I blame her. I say she aided and abetted me because she borrowed me money to go sometimes. So she's got to partly take the blame for that.
What's your wife's name?
Lisa.
Lisa, this is all your fault.
I'm sorry, babe. It had to come out eventually.
So obviously you've had this kind of crazy thing going around the world, fighting, being stabbed, or the whole thing sounds just like crazy to someone who's never been through that. And then when did the political stuff happen? Because I know you mentioned you didn't really sit anywhere in politics. You were just literally, like you said, you're working class, so you voted Labour.
Well, I didn't actually know my mum and dad voted for. I assumed because we were poor,
right,
that it was probably Labour. So I knew Labour was red, Conservative was blue, and that was it. That's as much as what I knew. I knew there were, for example, a lot of council workers where I lived, and that seemed to be the main employment where we lived, or the building trade. Lorry driver, maybe, I suppose. But no, I didn't really understand a lot about politics. And one evening, some young people came and knocked on the door, slightly older than me. And they seemed very nice, very idealistic, and they were concerned about the unemployed and bad housing and health. And I thought, well, I can identify with that, And they invited me to a young socialist meeting. And I say to this day, Tottenham had been playing that night. There's no way I'd have gone to that meeting. I went along, and this is where I discovered the middle classes. I didn't know any middle class people. Probably a teacher might have been middle class, but I didn't know any middle class people. And this place seemed to be full of these people. And it turned out they were actually the Workers' Revolutionary Party. The Young Socialist was obviously the junior wing of them. So when they started speaking, I kind of thought, yeah, I can see that. I agree with that, And I did become engrossed in it. Eventually, I would sell their newspaper, Newsline. I'd go to rallies, I'd go to meetings. But there were still things like they'd come out with things like the petty bourgeoisie and the laissez-faire this, and I think, what the fuck's that? I didn't ever.
You just nodding your head though.
I never heard any Cockney rhyming slang. Let's put it that way. And then one particular occasion, I found them very, very derogatory about the British Army. I didn't know a lot about Irish politics. I knew the post office tower had been blown up near Warren Street. That was the early 70s. I knew there was the Birmingham pub bombings, 1974. Lived in a big Irish community. Most of my mates were probably Irish descent, or if not full Irish. And so didn't really understand the politics of the place. Didn't really feel any animosity between anybody, any neighbours and so on. But they were very pro. Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say they were very pro IRA, but they were certainly pro United Ireland.
Right.
But I could sense that some of them were a little bit militant. And what dragged me away from that was friends eventually said to me, Frank, make up your mind. Is it going to be the football or the politics? And I thought, well, football's going to win. Football's going to win every time. And then years later, I was in a pub in Somers Town. A friend of mine who's still known to this day used to work down Smithfield Meat Market. He came in, he was right wing. He gave me a leaflet, invited me to the meeting. And me being me, I threw myself straight into that. And their policies were one of support the Loyalists in Northern Ireland, i.e. against the IRA or against Republicans.
Do you know what would be really useful, Frank, and people that are listening to or watching this may not know about the situation in Ireland. So it'd be good if you could, obviously you're talking about United Ireland.
Yeah.
So the
It's a long drawn out history, obviously, and everyone's going to have their version of it, and I appreciate that. Everyone's got their own story to tell, but no, if basically we'll focus on Belfast, for example, or Londonderry or Derry, whichever people prefer. If you were a Catholic, you was a nationalist and maybe a Republican. If you were a Protestant, you were a Unionist or a Loyalist. So one wanted to remain as a United Ireland, or wanted there to be a United Ireland, and one wanted to remain part of the United Kingdom.
Got it.
So I did know some people from Northern Ireland, and they would have been Unionists, and in some cases, Loyalists. And over a course of time, I knew people that had been imprisoned, had been killed. There were bombs going off on the mainland, and what became just selling their magazines, selling badges, collecting money for prisoners, got to the stage where there would be two marches in London every year. In January, you'd have the troops out, Bloody Sunday parade, which, on the face of it, it was just calling for justice for those that had been killed in Londonderry by the British Army. But you knew that on that parade, it wasn't just about people seeking justice. It was a bit more than that. And the banners would show you that, some of the banners and flags being carried. And plus you'd have a Republican flute band at the front shouting I and then RA. Well, what's that got to do with justice for people that have been... So we saw beyond what they got permission for the parade for. And then equally in August in Holloway Road, you'd have the Irish Freedom Movement would have the anti-internment parade. Well, internment had finished years before. It was just an excuse to be on the streets. So we started to attack these parades. And I will explain, it wasn't anti-Irish because a lot of my mates, their mum and dads were Irish. So it wasn't anti-Irish, it wasn't anti-Catholic, because so many of them had gone to Catholic school. They probably just wasn't interested in. We were Londoners. We were Londoners and we were British. That was our bond. That's what kept us together, So we would physically attack these parades. The police got to know us the same way they got to know us at football. And then one day we kind of said, well, it's not exactly equal, is it? We're throwing a few punches. They're blowing us up. What are we going to do about it? Well, we had no experience of how to go about doing anything. But we did meet up with people that we'd met who'd lived in London. And eventually we met someone who was acting as a conduit to a paramilitary group a loyalist paramilitary group, the Ulster Defence Association, the UDA, in Belfast. And we arranged to meet their representative who lived in London. And that was the start of that particular journey. And
at any point, I mean, when did you do your first trip actually over to Ireland?
The beginning to the mid-80s, and it was a very, very violent time, and you had to be really careful how you travelled from A to B, because the wrong turning could have you in serious trouble, and particularly if you had an English accent as well, because you could be mistaken for a soldier. So if you went too near to a Republican area, you'd be in big trouble. But we went and met this chap. He was a Scotsman, me and another friend, and we were thoroughly underwhelmed by him. He stunk of vodka. I went back to the original conduit and said, listen, if you think I'm putting my mates under the leadership of this fella, you can forget it. It's not going to happen. We sensed that this fella wanted to be in charge and wanted us to help him oust this bloke. So we thought, you know what, we'll let him be in charge. But privately we'll do our own thing. But eventually he showed his true colours, and on one particular occasion we had someone come along and they had like a catalogue of guns and basically said, look, you can have what you need, what you want.
Is it like the Argus Callum?
Yeah, well, yeah, something like that, yeah. And his words were, good work, speak to Frank. And another mate went, hold on, you're meant to be in charge. We take a dive, you take a dive. And then we see he never had the art for it, or the bottle for it, to be more precise. And a few days later, there was no mobiles in those days, and we drove over to Lambeth where he lived, went in a phone box, told him he was in a pub. There was 5 of us, 2 of us sitting down, 3 at the bar. He could sense the mood as soon as he walked in, and he went, oh, before you say anything, he said, I'm standing down. I said, no, you're not, you've been fucking stood down. Which was great, because one of the boys had a sawn off on him. No, it wasn't going to kill him, but it would have been too mouthy. It had done his knees for a start. I'm glad we didn't. In hindsight, I'm glad we didn't, because there'd have been no need for it. It would have made a statement, but I'm glad we didn't do that. Well, of course, who's going to take over now? Who's going to take over the mantle, so to speak? And there were other existing members in London, so you had to be respectful of them as well. So we approached them, and we suggested that we would be North London, they would be South London, and let us crack on and do what we want to do. So that's really how it started. And then we would meet other people from all around England, Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Coventry, Corby. And we would chat to them. And over a course of time, we didn't find them particularly militant for people that were calling themselves paramilitaries. So we challenged a lot of people and basically said, I'll be honest about it, we basically said, well, go on, fuck off. You know, if you're not going to be this way. And there were confrontations between us. And I appreciate that we were the Cockney upstarts. That's the way they viewed us. Who were these fellas like, you know? And I remember an occasion we went to a particular social club. I won't name it. I don't embarrass anybody. And we told them what was what when me and a mate went to get in the car. And they came out mob-handed. And one of us had a 9mm Brandon automatic in his inside pocket, you know, his overcoat pocket, pulled it out and went, well, keep coming. And they clearly didn't. So they knew he wasn't messing about. So yeah, that's when we kind of put our stamp on it. Look, this is us.
I mean, obviously you got these guys carrying firearms. Was that just literally because at any point in time you could have had someone try to take you out?
I suppose it went with the territory, because people weren't going to take notice of you necessarily just, you know, by you going up there and telling them what's what. And it could have just been a physical fight. But there was only 2 of us, and I wasn't going to take the chance. So, yeah, and we did that. We went round consistently and met up with people.
Did they do any like formal training? Like if you go in the army, obviously. Yeah,
you had a thing in Northern Ireland. It was called your Orange Wings. You did a form of paramilitary training, and you earned your wings. And there's an actual song, Orange Wings, like, you know. It's
and what's the training? What is it? Is it learning to shoot? Is it?
It could learn to shoot. It could be how to make an incendiary device. Obviously, general fitness. Very basic. I mean, I would say it certainly wasn't to the degree that what the IRA would have had. Technology-wise, building stuff and so on, they would have been years in front of that. But yeah, there was some basic. We had a place up in East Anglia. A friend had a bit of land. So, you know, you'd do things like you'd put filing cabinets up, and you test for, you know, the distance of when you fired and, you know, how much it penetrated and so on. Yeah, he had the shooting and the fishing rights for that, which was revealed sometime later in a publication.
Right.
Yeah, I don't look. How much training do you need to walk in a bank with a gun and say, "Give us the money"? You know, you pull the trigger, the chances are there's a bullet going to come out the other end, isn't it? So.
And what would you say? I mean, was the membership? Would it be 1,000 or would it be 10,000 or 100,000?
Not here. I mean, I've always been very loath. To say how many of us there was.
Okay.
Right.
It was just, you don't have to give the exact number, but it's just...
Well, you take into account as well, you could have had 100 people. That didn't make everybody a gunman.
Right.
just because they was a member of that organisation.
Got it.
So you would have, it was almost like ancillary staff. You'd have people that would collect money for prisoners. You'd have people that sold magazines and badges for prisoners. You'd have people that collected money knowing full well that was going towards buying guns and ammunition. And you would have a very, very small group of people that you knew and you trusted, who you would say, you could be a member of the UDA and not necessarily be a gunman, for example. It was the Ulster Defence Association. But there was a group within that called the UFF, which was the Ulster Freedom Fighters. And they were, at the time, were a prescribed organisation. So if you were proved to be a member of that, you was away, straight away, They acted with autonomy. They,
Right.
They wouldn't necessarily ask to do certain things. And so we had our own group, if you like, and that didn't only consist of just people from London. We identified militant people from other areas, so they basically worked with us.
Got it. I mean, that was the other thing, Frank. When you sort of see these organisations, you have like a boss, and then you have like obviously these units or under bosses, and then they sort of get all these different people doing their different things. Was there a structure to it, or
yes?
Right. Okay.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a structure. I think where we went wrong was we went to Belfast. So I would have been, me and one other would have been entitled to go to meetings of the equivalent, an OC, so officer commanding, and a 2IC. So that would be the inner council. So we'd go and we'd listen to what was being said, and then we'd contribute, we'd give an update on whatever. Looking back on it now, that at least 2 or 3 on that inner council were what they would call touts, what we would call grasses. Right. So they'd be working for Special Branch or the RUC or military intelligence, etc. And we had got quite a substantial amount of weapons to certain people. But where we blotted our copybook, so to speak, was on one occasion we'd said that we were actively targeting an MP, and they freaked out. And our argument was, well, they've assassinated Ian Gow, who was a Conservative MP. They've tried to wipe out the government of the day, who I probably didn't even necessarily agree with anyway, but that's not the point. It's still our government, with the Brighton bombing.
I remember that.
And
that was the IRA, though, right?
Yeah, that was the IRA. So we were of a mind, well, what about the Labour MPs that support a united Ireland, and in some cases, some of them acted, as far as we were concerned, supported the IRA? Why are they not a target? Why is no one trying to touch them? And that freaked them out. That totally freaked them out. And they knew 3 people that we'd targeted. And it was no coincidence that we then got heavily trailed by Special Branch, And what would happen was, or what they used to do is they'd play you and they'd say, yeah, go on, lads, well done. And then what to do, a couple of them would come over and say, listen, fellas, we've got some information. We've been talking to an RUC officer who's got a contact on the mainland, and apparently there's an operation going on at the moment and they're watching fellas in London. So that stopped us, didn't it? So you'd done months and months of reconnaissance. You knew who was going to do what. You knew what was going to be needed. You knew where they were going to, disappear to for a while. You'd done all that, and then you'd get it that people say, "Oh no, leave it, fellas, because we're rubbish."
Did you ever fear?
It was all meant to put us off. It was all meant to put us off.
Did you ever sort of feel like, Frank, or ever think, you was in any danger, or was you just in it?
No, and that's my own fault. That's my own being blasé, because I'll mention it now. What I said to you earlier, I describe it like this: it's like getting on a treadmill, and you press the green button and you go forward, and you don't look to the left, don't look to the right, and you don't look behind you. You've got a job to do, you're in charge, people are relying on you, you just keep going forward. And then one day you press the red button and you get off and you go, how did I get here? How did I land up here? You know, and you kind of say, well, why did I get on there? Why did people encourage me to get on there? Why didn't they get on there? You didn't have any mechanisms in place if it went wrong. You just kept thinking, I'm doing the right thing. I'm defending a community. I'm in the right. You don't think of anybody else. You think, I'm in charge. I'm right. I mean, I like to think I acted with responsibility. I don't think I ever took advantage of it. And you did have a lot of power. I mean, there was the power of life and death, you know, over people. But like I say, I like to think I acted responsibly with that. But the only time, don't forget, I wasn't blasé when I was in Belfast. I mean, I was very tuned up. I was conscious of, I was always looking at number plates. Well, thinking, is that a Republican? Is that the media? Or is that the authorities? I was always conscious of that. And but the irony is, I think the nearest it came to it was actually with another loyalist paramilitary, and he was a Scouse fellow I had a lot of respect for. He was ex-army, and I know now that someone else was stirring it between them. This person knew we were both a bit volatile, shall we say, and he played it well. He stirred it well. And on an occasion, I was indoors. The front door went, and I had an inner door as well for security. And I'd done that door, and as I got to the door, this fellow was standing. I didn't recognise him at first. He'd grown a beard, and he had a hat on, and I wasn't sure who it was. And then he opened his mouth, and I realised it was this fellow that I knew from Liverpool. And we'd had a bit of a fallout over something, and he went like that inside his coat. I thought, F that. Slammed the front door, slammed the inner door, and I put my back up against the wall and worked my way along the wall. Because I knew if I went on the floor, he'd shoot down, because he's an ex-army. He knows the score. So I worked my way around, went down the stairs, and I had a little bar downstairs in the basement. And as I got in the room, I heard one of the little windows get put through. And I looked down, and there was a wooden mallet on the floor. And I thought, are you f***ing kidding me? You've come 200 miles to do me with a wooden mallet. You know, shoot me at least, have a bit of respect, shoot me. And then I thought, well, when I opened the front door, why didn't you just go bang, you know, and hit me on the head? So my respect for him went straight out the window. I thought, you know, if you're going to be a fucking paramilitary, at least be a decent one. Anyway, I assumed he'd driven down from Liverpool. I got in my car, I went round to a mate, I picked something up. I know the shortcuts back to the M1, what we'd call in the old days the burglars' routes. Right. And drove up to the start of the M1. And I don't know what I was going to do, if I'm honest. Was I going to stop his car? Was I going to shoot him as the car was? I don't know what I was going to do. I was just in a mad rage. I felt insulted. And I learned afterwards he'd come on the train anyway. He'd come on the train to Euston. And I put the word about up in Liverpool, Manchester and places. Look, you're telling me we've got to meet up, and if he wants to meet me in Belfast, we'll do that. And then he went off the scene, and the last I heard, he'd moved to Blackburn. So that was probably the nearest. But yeah, I was conscious. I suppose I was conscious to a degree. And I will say now, I've got no doubt if I lived in Belfast or Northern Ireland, I think I'd have either been doing life or I'd have been dead. I don't think there'd have been much in between.
Okay, that's not left or right, both not great choices. Wow.
No, but I'd gotten to that stage, and the other thing is your character changes because your targets become less discerning. You suddenly think, well, they sell their papers for them, they collect money for them, they organise their parades for them. We'll have them and all. We'll target them. So you've gone on a mad one, haven't you? You've now gone on you've started that journey, and you know eventually. I mean, I said to you briefly earlier, we had access to a box of hand grenades, and we had a quarry. We had some motorbikes put on one side, and we was going to test these, and we asked the fella concerned. because you can only test an hand grenade once, can't you? So we said we wanted a few, you know, and we wanted to pick them. We didn't want him to hand them to us. We wanted to pick them. And we had a fellow who was ex-army, and he said they all looked like the serial numbers and everything. And he asked the fellow, the timing on them, on the pins. And then he went a bit cold on us. And we thought, oh, there's a lot of money involved here. And someone sensed they was being followed. And then all of a sudden he wanted to be very helpful. And we could take as many as we wanted. And we thought, hold on, there's something not right here. And I'm glad, because I dread to think what we'd have done with those grenades. Because our mentality was almost, we wanted to outdo our mates in Belfast. It was like, we're going to prove to you, when we say we were going to be militant, we're going to be militant. Don't worry about that.
Wow.
I don't think we ever realised why they're called British intelligence. Because once they're on you, they're on you. And years later, I was actually approached, and that conversation took place. Now, that was after I come out of prison. That was at an airport. And that's not special branch at the airport. This was military intelligence. I mean, they showed me their cards. And they mentioned things from the past, and they mentioned the grenades. So we were clearly being set up. Wow. And there was an occasion they came to my house, and they had a car, and they said, get in. I thought, because I knew I'd been up to something. Right. Sat in the back of the car, and they said to me, we know where you was on this date, that date. You went and picked this up from so-and-so. You drove to Paddington. You had the key to some rooms upstairs. You opened the door. 2 fellas and 2 girls were there. You put the bag inside. I couldn't believe it. Could not believe it.
And you sort of went through from that conversation where they sort of had you in the back of the car. What was what happened next? What was the? Well,
they'd have probably done me a favour if they'd have nicked me.
But at that point, though, Frank, did you actually think, "Can on me here," or did you think, they've obviously got nothing, I'm just going to carry on, or did it make you a little bit sort of more?
No, I just think I was blasé about it. I just kind of thought, keep going, keep pressing the green button on the, and just keep going. Well, I'm not nicked, am I? So I'm not worried about it. Maybe be a little bit cuter now, maybe a bit more conscious who I talk to. I mean, that was military intelligence. I mean, don't forget, I was getting stopped by a special branch in between that as well. And that wasn't just at airports.
So the special branch for the readers, that's an international government intelligence?
Special branch are more local. Like you've got MI5, you've got MI6, you've got special branch, you've got military intelligence. And that's always the accusations that's made. And even when the bombs went off, and the Islamic fellas who travelled from Luton, and you had King's Cross, didn't you? You had Russell Square, the bus blew out Russell Square. That was probably 10 years after I was arrested, or even when I got out, and there was still the accusation that they don't share information,
right? Because
they've got their own budgets. So if you got a £10 million budget, for argument's sake, and I'm not sharing my information with you,
right?
Because I've got to look after my own budget and my own department, my own men and women, I dare say. So there was the accusation when I got arrested that they hadn't shared information, and all those years later, it still goes on. They're very greedy about their budgets and sharing information. If they shared
it might be able to save some money.
Well, they'd certainly probably be able to save some lives, but there is definitely some rivalry there, some competition. I mean, it happens in the police. I think it happens in certain sections of the police force as well. The CID or whatever. They're not very good at sharing information. They're very greedy. So that should have been the warning. That's where I was far too blasé. Well, I got away with that, didn't I? But all it was delayed. It was just delayed to another situation. And
then leading up to when you actually got arrested, did you feel like the world was closing in, or was you just going along and
No, No, just thought we were still identifying certain people. There was one in particular MP that was very, very lucky. On a march, on a bloody Sunday parade in Edgware Road, where, say again, no mobiles in those days, and we travelled all around the country, and we got, I think over 1,000 people, I think we got on the streets that day in Edgware Road. This was in 1993. And they were going to walk up Edgware Road into, Cricklewood, Kilburn, etc. We were all gathered there, and what the plan was to cause as much mayhem on that parade so that MP that was at the front, that someone was going to get up close, shoot him, get away, someone on a motorbike, safe house, etc. And where it went wrong was, I'm glad it went wrong now because I'd probably be still away, but what went wrong was the demonstrators, we were the demonstrators, I beg your pardon, they were the people, well, they were demonstrators as well, were all in Hyde Park. And we heard a senior police officer make a comment over his radio, and we thought, hold on, what's going on here? And they wouldn't let the march out of Hyde Park. And then all these green buses turned up, and they took 300 and something people off the streets.
A lot of people.
And took them, yeah, exactly.
Never mind
civil rights.
Right.
They just took these people off the street and took them to various police stations. The rest of us, they pushed into various pubs. I remember we was in the Old English Gentleman. And I asked to speak to a senior police officer. I said, they come past this pub and they're playing an IRA tune. We're coming out of this pub, don't worry. Whether we had to go through the windows, we ain't having it. And fair play to him, he stopped them playing when they went past. But before they let them out the park, it was quite. I said to this senior police officer, I said, that's ironic, isn't it? He said, what's that? I said, see the people in that park you're now protecting? So when one of your fellow officers in Northern Ireland, a member of the RUC, gets shot, see that mob be there? I said, they're all happy about it. I said, so don't you feel a little bit silly that you're protecting them? And he kind of took my point, but wouldn't admit it, Anyway, consequently, that attempt, we'll call it, and it's in the book. It's in the book. I've been quite honest about it. That didn't happen, and there were two other MPs that were. One was very lucky, very, very lucky. But that's the stage it had got to. That's how militant it had. That's how extreme it had become. And it's quite strange because people have said to me before now, "Oh, Frank, do you feel like you was radicalised in some way?" And I've laughed and said, "No. I was doing the radicalising, not consciously.
Right.
I don't think I was conscious, but looking back on it, my friends were staying very loyal to me. They've been loyal to me through the football. They've been loyal to me through the politics, and here they were again being loyal to me." And I dare say there was a lot of them. I thought, I wish he'd knock it on the head.
I suppose it's that. I suppose for people to understand, if you're passionate about something and you believe in something, and you stand by what you believe in, and then you get surrounded by other people, and you're all literally on that journey where you're all going, right, this is right. We're making a difference. We got to. Take into account, you've got to take responsibility. They're relying on you. They're relying on your leadership. They're looking for you to enforce what they're saying. So if you've made some very, very bold statements, well, you've got to back it up, because otherwise you're no better than all the people you ousted before. So, yeah, it does become a bit of stone around your neck, you know what I mean? You do kind of, but that's it. If you think you're doing good for people, and you're helping a community, you don't see any wrong in it, do you? You don't see any wrong. So looking back on it now, look, someone can shake my hand now, buy me a pint, pat me on the back and go, well done, Frank, and all that. And it means fuck all to me now.
It means nothing. I know what they mean, and I appreciate it, but it's a massive chunk of my life. It's the price that's been paid for it was a big price.
I mean, and when you got arrested, what was the catalogue of events that led up to that? Was you actually on a job? Or
it was actually partial. It was quite partial, really. We'd been told that some different weapons were needed. You know, they didn't have an history of them so there was no forensics, if you like. You know, there was no history of them in Northern Ireland. So could we very, very quickly supply something? Something was going to happen. I needed the fresh stuff. Somebody said, okay. So we got together some bits and pieces, and it was 7 handguns and 240 rounds of ammunition. And someone was meant to take them up. So this would have been May Bank Holiday 1993. And he'd got to a place, he'd got to Perry Bar Dog Track. Now, everyone knew Perry Bar Stadium was a dog track. But the fellow who was meant to be meeting from Belfast turned up at some other stadium. It was like an athletic stadium. That was ridiculous. He came back, reported to me. I met him over Victoria Park, over the East End. He's given me the bag, and I've broken my own rule. Don't lose your temper. Don't do things in temper. Snatched the bag off him and said, "F it, I'll do it myself." And Easter Monday, I drove up, met the fella, was in the car park and the back of a pub, handed it over. Both of us went to walk round the corner to go to another pub. 2 blokes were walking towards me, and they gave me the impression they weren't going to get out of the way. And I was about to go, "Get out of the fucking way." And all of a sudden, I opened up their coats and they had Heckler and Koch machine guns, and it went mental.
Did you think that they were law enforcement?
I don't think I had time to think, if I'm honest.
Right.
The element of surprise, definitely. I don't think I had time to think.
Right, because did you think you was gonna get taken out then? Did you think this is it?
No, because there was so much. They disorientate you, don't they? There was just cars coming out, people jumping out of bushes.
Right.
You haven't got time to take it all in. You're looking like, you're like, and all you hear is, get on the floor, and I got on the floor, keep down. Well, of course, I'll move my head to see where the belt boss fella was. And I got smashed in the cheekbone with an handgun, and it fucking hurt. And my natural instinct was to fucking get up and go, "Who's done that?" Or, of course, as I'd done it, the machine gun was on the old back of the head, and I thought, well, maybe not.
Maybe I'll stay here.
Yeah, So, that's when, and then you was dragged into a plane car and taken off. And the only godsend was they put me in a cell near to the front desk. There was a lot of movement, and I got my ear up against the door, and I heard the young fella say, "Oh, is this the tail end of Saturday's Operation Gov?" I thought, what are they talking about Saturday? Today's Monday. So then I knew that my mate had been followed on the Saturday.
Who had the...
Who'd gone to the right venues, the other fella that hadn't gone. That's why the bag hadn't been picked up.
Right.
That's what made me go, because I was embarrassed.
So if he'd have gone to the right place, you probably wouldn't have got arrested at that time.
No, but I'm glad I did, because I'd have probably got done for a lot worse.
Right.
So you don't want to get caught, but on the other hand, if you're going to get caught...
It's the smaller...
Yeah. So, and then from there I got taken somewhere, and then eventually I landed up in Winson Green, and it was straight on the Category A yard, and lovely welcome from the Screws, welcome to Winson Green, the last bastion of the POA, the Prison Officers Association. They were very proud of that.
Right.
Pushed into a cell, then they throw the pyjamas in. The fucking legs are up here. There's no buttons down the front, sleeves up here. So they immediately start to dehumanise you. And don't forget, I wasn't anti-authority particularly.
Right. You are now.
I got some different opinions of some of the aspects of it. And I remember sitting on this bed, I'm thinking, where's the toilet? And I looked under the sink and there was a plastic bucket with a lid. I thought, there's no way I'm using that bucket. that. There's no way I'm demeaning myself and squatting over that bucket. Let me tell you, 4 days later, I was fucking squatting over that bucket because I had no choice. And I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't tough. It was tough. I mean, it was freezing cold. Your food was brought to the door. You're lucky if you got 1 shower a week. You had no gym, no church. Couldn't go and get any supplies. Everything was to your door. Every so many days they take you out of your cell and move you to another cell to stop you planning to escape. You got obviously it was all closed visits. First you had to go through security. If you wanted to use the phone, it was only people who were authorised. At that time, it was only my wife. Someone would sit in the office and they would tape the conversation. So if you made reference to something you shouldn't, you was cut off straight away. And eventually, so after a couple of days, I got exercise. You went down some steps into a very small, not much bigger than this, maybe the same size as this, corrugated iron, razor wire. And there was a bloke there marching round on his own. And I thought, who the fuck's this? And it turned out to be Charlie Bronson.
Right.
Yeah. And he had a pair of hobnail boots on and a bib and brace. And he was marching around and he went, oh, hello, mate. He said, you're the boys from London. He said, I heard about you on the radio. And he asked a very awkward question. He went, oh, what football team do you support? And I thought, oh, here we go. Here's a good start, innit? That's going to start a row, innit? And I went, Tottenham, mate. He went, oh, good man. He was Tottenham. I didn't know. He come from Luton, didn't he?
So for anyone watching this, Charlie Bronson, Britain's most notorious prisoner, is a Tottenham football club supporter.
Yeah, we still write to each other, and he always puts a little cockerel on the bottom or up the Spurs or something.
Do you know something? I when the film Bronson was being made, I was in touch with him because I was involved in that, and it's actually quite funny because he sent me some of his art, and I mean, look, I don't know when he's going to come out, if he's ever going to come out, but I think he's probably Britain's longest serving prisoner that hasn't really done anything that bad other than...
Well, for the crime that he committed, no, I agree. I mean, he's messed about the system quite a bit, I grant you.
Yeah.
But
do you think he's just done that because he's just rebellious? I mean, what was he like when you met him?
I think you've got to take into account that there were times, I mean, they physically, medically, they treated him like an animal. And so you can't complain that someone's acting like an animal, if you're treating them like an animal. And there were times he was. And I'm not some kind of sycophant, who's going to stick up for everything he's ever done. Like when he's kidnapped the governor or the fella, he put the pen in his ear and he said he was going to... I'm not advocating that, far from it. But it's a disproportionate amount of time that he's been in. And I honestly believe if he's kept away from people who are going to use him, and let's face it, people will use him for their own means. I think if he's taken away, if he's given I think he needs a mentor. If someone could mentor him and him just be allowed to do his paintings and do his poetry and so on and address, young people and so on.
He could become like a Dalai Lama, couldn't he?
Well, I just think he's got so much. I think he's got so much to offer. But if you're going to bulk the system the way he's done it, I suspect the expectation is that he dies. Right. He dies inside.
I mean, I've had a couple of conversations with him and I've written to him and he's written back to me. And I've always found him, and maybe it's just, me, but I've always found him to be quite a gentle, generous, like, he wants to,
He's got a great sense of humour for a start. He's got a great sense of humour, and I'm not trying to plug my book, but I'd encourage people to buy it because of the references I make to Charlie, some of the personal stories. Well, I'll give you one, just to give you a taster. I don't know if you remember a chap called Michael Sams. Michael Sams kidnapped Stephanie Slater and he held her in a box up in Newark. And he wanted reward money, ransom money. And what he did was he went to like a disused railway track with a bridge, and he wanted to come along on like a scooter type thing And they'd lower the money, and it'd be dark, obviously, and they'd lower the money down and he'd scoot off and then he'd tell them where she was. Anyway, he actually got away with it. He got away with doing that. But I think it was his wife that recognised him. Anyway, he landed up at Winson Green and he went to come down. One of my co-Ds had gone home after 6 weeks. They couldn't prove he knew what was in the bag. And I certainly wasn't going to tell him that he didn't know what was in the bag. So he walked. That aggravated the Belfast fella. He thought he should have walked. And that's when I got another side of him that I stopped trusting him. One had gone home, one was with his solicitor, and all of a sudden this fella came down and said, well, Michael Sam's had a false leg. And that was the first thing I noticed. And I said to the screw, who's this? It was only me and Charlie. I went, who's this? And he said, oh, this is Michael. Didn't tell me his surname. So, of course, I'd heard it on the radio. I said, well, let's tell you something. If you think I'm walking around here with him, I said, you can forget it. And they turned him straight around and they took him off. Well, the next day they went to bring him again. Anyway, I'd never known Charlie, and he got 15 minutes if you were lucky. I've never known Charlie go to ask to come off the yard. And I thought, that's strange. What's he want to go up for? Well, when they went, Sam's, they wouldn't let him have his leg inside the cell. But when Charlie went past his cell, he kidnapped his leg. It's a true story. He just kidnapped his leg. And of course, the screws didn't go in the fucking cell because he'd have battered them with this, this plastic leg.
Did he ask him for ransom? Did he want 3 packets of prawn cocktail crisps?
So it was like, Charlie, can we have Mr. Sam's leg back? But that was, there's stories, that are like that would be typical.
I mean, I think some of his art has raised good money for various charities.
Yeah.
And I think like you said, if he comes out or when he comes out, I think if he had the right people around him, I mean, his art is completely unique to him. And I think if he actually had the materials and he did some stuff, I mean, it's the sort of thing that if you look at all the great artists, when they were alive, very few of them actually made it. But then when they died, it was like, wow.
Well, if Banksy can make millions because he kind of cornered a certain market, didn't he, a certain genre, well, you can't say that Charlie hasn't got his own particular genre.
Do you think if he made millions, though, do you think he'd donate any of that?
Well, he couldn't have it, could he? Because he wouldn't be able to. You're not allowed to profit from the proceeds of crime anymore, are you?
But he's painting pictures.
His are all is a charity. It all goes.
I just wondered if he would donate any money to the prison service or any of the.
I won't suggest it to him. Let's put it that way.
Charlie, I've had a really good idea.
Don't bother writing anymore, Frank. I mean, But no, I mean, there's times when they've been cruel to him and they've taken away his drawing material. And, they know how to hurt him. They know how to hurt him when they want to. But no, it's been this year is 30 years since I first met Charlie.
Wow.
And I'm not going to lie and say I was getting on with my own life when I first got out. But I was conscious he was the first person that I met and he befriended me, and I've always appreciated that. So, as I say, I don't write to him as a Bronson fan, if you like. I'm not a member of the Bronson fan club. I just thought it was a decent thing to do.
Yeah.
And he knows that,
I mean, the other thing that we haven't covered really, Frank, was that obviously you was on remand at this prison.
Winson Green, yeah.
And how long was you there before you actually went to trial?
I was there 9 months and I only had really a couple of incidents. I mean, what I will say is, there were so many months before I got a visit with my wife, an open visit like this. We'd be like this and there'd be 2 screws. So you wasn't amongst the general population. And I remember saying to her, I'm glad I got caught. And she said, how on earth can you want to get caught? And I said, babe, where did you think this was going to lead to? You can't be in charge and you can't have guns wrapped around you and not use them. I think that's the first time a penny dropped for her. And she asked me a really awkward question. She said, are you telling me you'd have killed somebody or you'd have shot somebody? And to this day, I don't think I ever answered. I think I shrugged. I kind of went, well, which was a yes, basically. And I could see the look on her face because I'm her husband, I'm the father of her children. And I think that's where she thought this wasn't just about going with the boys to Belfast and Glasgow and wherever else. She suddenly realised the seriousness of it all. But it got it out of the way. And in all fairness, I only had 2 incidents on remand. One was a wing cleaner had been left to clean the wing, and we'd never had any association. And after about 6 months, even they couldn't stop us. The law was the law. And they said, well, let 4 of you out in the afternoon, 4 in the evening. So I came out with 3 others, and there was this black fella standing near the pool table. They put a pool table there for us. And I said, what the fuck's he doing here? And one of the screws went, what's it got to do with you? I said, I tell you it's got to do with me. I said, I'm not doing my association with a fucking dirty fist. And I said to the other 3, get behind your door. Get behind your door. Don't, you know. And I wasn't asking them, I was telling them, get behind your door. Anyway, the old Mufti squad turned up, then they fucking started knocking me about in the cell, then they took me up to I don't think it was the actual governor of the prison, it was probably the wing governor. And he said, I won't have you tell my staff what they can and cannot do. And I said, I'm not telling your staff what to do. I'm telling them what I'm not going to do, and I'm not doing my association with dirty noble rapist. He said, I will remind you, he said, that everybody's innocent until proven guilty. I said, oh, is that why he got 6 years for doing it previously and landed up in Stafford prison? Because I'd heard the other fellas on the working wing talking about him. Well, I got off with that. They didn't give me any, injunctions or whatever, And the only other time was, it was coming out to Christmas. I'd never had a wedding ring. My wife said, I'd like you to have a ring, let people know you've got a wife, And I said, well, look, when you come out the next time, have it on your finger. And just as we're saying goodbye, give it to me, I'll slip it on. And before you go on a visit, you have to take everything off. And I mean everything, a whole different set of clothing. And so when you come back, you've got to do the reverse. And as I was standing there, and this screw went to me, have you brought an item back from the visit? I thought, he's got to know, isn't he? Because there's a camera there. There's 2 others. It's a question he already knows the answer to. And I went, no. And he went, are you sure about that? And I went, yeah. And he went, you bought an item of jewellery back? And I went, oh, that, yeah. And he went, let me see it. And I showed him it. And he said, take it up. And I went, no. And he went, I'm giving you a direct order. Take it up. And I lost the plot. And I went, let me tell you something now. See the governor or the Queen of England. I said, the only way you're getting that finger up, you said, you're going to have to cut it off. That's the first time I'd made a proper stand, because it was emotional, it was personal. I suppose I knew what was coming. Same again, 10, 15 minutes later, these fucking big lumps come in, knocked me about a little bit. And then I had to go and see the proper governor then. And I remember him saying to me, because it's Christmas and in the spirit of Christmas, and generally speaking, you've not been any trouble to us, he said, I'm going to let you keep the ring. He said, but I'm going to need you to apologise to the officer concerned. And I thought, so I remember saying, I didn't want to say his name. I thought, I'm not going to give you that much respect. And I went, I apologise to the officer concerned. And I kept the ring, and that was it, So generally on remand, I had, well, it wasn't a great deal of opportunity not to behave yourself, in fairness. But yeah, I tried to play it straight, and then obviously landed up in court eventually.
Where did you go? Where was your case heard?
That was Birmingham Crown Court, and my co-D, he could have got off. They couldn't prove he knew what was in that bag, but they spooked him up. He went upstairs. He was going upstairs for he was going up for trial. I was there just for sentencing. I couldn't get sentenced quick enough because I thought, what the are they going to bring up? What other charges are they going to bring to the table? Find me guilty, bang me up, and that was it.
So did you plead guilty?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, and what was the charges?
The charges were, let me get this straight, it's 30 years now. It was possession of firearms and possession with intent to endanger, to supply persons unknown with the intent to endanger the lives of persons unknown. So my barrister kept telling me it's 10 to 14 years. right? So I was thinking if I got 8, I'd be happy, get off, be aiming 4. So on the day, he goes up because he's got a plead. And this fella opened up the thing and the hatch, and he went to me, your mate's just pleaded guilty. I went, you're all right, mate, pull the other one. And he went, no, he's pleaded guilty. So when he come down, I said, what are you playing at? And he had all tears in his eyes. And I thought, maybe his family's had an accident on the way over, He said, did you know this carried a life sentence? And I went, yeah. He went, how long have you known that? I said, from the beginning. I said, it's just as well you didn't know, because I'd dread to think what you'd have told people. Anyway, they done the deal and they offered him 2 to 3 years. When we done 9 months on remand, that counts as 18 months. So we go upstairs and now we're both just going to be sentenced. The judge gave a long drawn-out speech, said things about me like, if you lay down with dogs, you've got to expect to pick up fleas and God knows what. And he explained to the press and the law students who were in attendance something about the way the sentencing was going to go. So I might mention his name, but all of a sudden he just went, blah, 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 I sentenced you to 30. I thought, he's giving him 30 years. And he went 30 months. So 2.5 years. He'd done 9 months on remand, counts for 18. He only had 6 months left to do. And then the court went quiet. And I thought, here we go. Because he's already said I'm the ringleader, And he said to me, you're looking down both barrels of a double-figured sentence. And I thought, well, that's the fucking 8 gone out the window then, isn't it? We're starting off with 10 here. And he said a few more bits where, again, he explained to the press and the whatever. And all of a sudden he went to me, I'll sentence you to 5 years. So I stood there and the court screw pulled my arm. I'm waiting for another bit, and I went, what are you fucking doing? I was all annoyed. I was getting myself all, He went to give you 5 years. I went, yeah, and the fucking rest. And as I turned back, my mates was in the thing gallery going like that, thumbs up, and the judge was getting up and putting all his paperwork up. And it honestly never sunk in. It never sunk in. And I went downstairs and I passed his barrister because they were taking me to see my barrister and his junior. And as he passed me, he looks at me, he went, you are a very lucky man. And I said, how'd you work that out, mate? I'm going to prison for 5 years. But you know what I mean. So he must have told him everything, So I go in the little office. The barrister's there and his junior. They both got a bit of paper. And one turned it over and it had 10 on it. And the other one had 12. Right. And I said, well, how have I landed up with 5? And they went, that's what the judge was trying to explain to the students and the press. He's given him 2.5 years. He's given you twice as much, which is 5. It don't sound a lot, but you can appeal that because that would be a disproportionate. If he'd have given you any more, it would have been a disproportionate sentence because he's already given you twice what he got. So I was very lucky.
I suppose really by that co-defendant of yours, putting his hands up and going guilty, that probably helped you.
Oh, big time. Big time.
If he'd have got off, then they might have gone, right, we're going to make an example of
taking this out on you. Oh, you'd have definitely got the double-figured sentence. I know how lucky it was. So as much as I'm criticising him, he actually done me, right. By his bottle game, he actually done me a massive favour. And, when I got back to Winston Green, my fucking smile was that big.
If I thought, what if you won the lottery, Frank?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'd done the silly speech over the phone. I'd already said to the old woman, listen, I'm looking at 10 to 14 years. I don't expect you to hang about. And the screw came, when the call was over, the screw came running at him. He went, what are you playing at? I went, what do you mean? He said, you've basically just told her to fuck off. He said, there's a woman who clearly loves you, and you're telling her to fuck off. I hadn't thought of it that way. I thought I was doing I didn't mean it, obviously.
No, of course.
But, I just thought, what can you say? What can you say to someone? You got to sit around and wait all those years.
Yeah.
And, so I got the result on that. And I got moved down to, once I was on the wing, I had plenty of violence then.
Right.
And then I went to Swale side and I got a little bit of a name there. They started calling me Frank the Baptist.
Sounds like a character out of Lock, Stock.
Well, yeah, Frank the Baptist. And all that was brought about, Terry, was I don't smoke, right? I don't do drugs. I don't anyway. So you get 2.5 ounces of old Oban tobacco. And so you cut it in half and you put it out and, double bubble. Well, no one wants to give you double back. They don't want to give you what you've had back. So it might be phone cards, it might be cash, it might be canteen. Well, over a course of time, I identified everyone that didn't smoke so that I could have their quota. So I started doing the tobacco. Then it started being phone cards. So phone cards were £2. For some reason, if you had 7 phone cards, somebody give you a £20 note. You thought that's only worth 14 quid. Why you give me a £20 note? But everyone needed something. Someone wanted tobacco. Someone needed phone cards to phone up for the drugs that they needed. Some wanted to pass money out. So I always had this nice supply of tobacco, phone cards, cash. Then it was budgie cages. Then it was trainers. This chain is from prison.
Right.
Yeah, it's all music systems. So the fellas who were on the brand, they begged their family to bring them in remember the old big music systems in the day, probably like £100, £150. They give it away for a tenner. So I thought, well, I won't be greedy. I'll give them 30, 40 quid. So when somebody new came in and they wanted a system, I'd say, well, guess 50, 60 quid for it. And they knew they was getting a bargain. So this was working great. I was paying to have hooch made. So you'd find out who the lifers were because they couldn't get any more trouble, could they, a lifer? So you'd put it under get them to put it under the bed near the hot water pipe so it would, so it'd brew nicely.
What does hooch taste like? Is it like a vodka sort of shot, or is it more like
a
strong
wine? If you have orange, if you obviously got yeast, sugar, your potatoes, you can make almost like a beer equivalent.
Right.
But I'll just tell you a quick story. One day that I got a call, and I said, Frank the Screws are coming. I went, all right. I said, what's happened? They used to put, the Pergol box with the milk in. You used to have a box and then you have plastic inside it. You put it in a machine and it's got a spout and you get milk out of it. Yeah. Well, we used to use them to brew in them. It's only exploded, innit? And I've gone in and this bloke's sitting on his bed. He's like in Tango Man. He was covered. It was all out the walls. A screw walked in. He went, what's happened here then? I went, don't worry, Gov. I said, it'll all be cleaned up. You haven't got to worry about it. And he just laughed at me. So long as it got cleaned up, he wasn't. So, I wouldn't do drugs. I think that's why they gave me a certain amount of leeway. I'd never get involved with drugs. Anyway, cut a long story, what happened was I 10 to 8, went to go and get a jug of hot water out the urn, your tea. And just as I went to push the door open, these 2 fellas came to the door and they clearly there to rob me. They're going to rob me. And I thought they're going to be tooled up, surely they're going to be tooled up. And it was just a gut reaction. I just launched the water. None of that putting sugar in it. It wasn't premeditated. I just launched the water and there was about that much in the bottom. And they f***ed off and the screw come up, what's happening? I said, you won't believe it, Gov. I said, these 2 geezers only f***ing bumped into me and the water's gone all over him. He went, yeah, all right. He went, all right. One particular fellow owed me. I said, listen, Bill, I want this, anything, the equivalent by Saturday. You've got canteen set. Oh, f*** he said. Anyway, they'd arranged a big inter-wing football match. And his bird had bought his boots in. As far as he was concerned, he was the best footballer in South London. So on the day, we're going down the stairs. I went, oh, Bill, don't forget what you owe me with that tobacco. Oh, f***, he went, oh, well, fair enough, Bill, fair enough. As I walked past his door, I see the boots, didn't I? Under the bed. So I nicked one. Not both of them, I nicked one of them. So we get banged up at lunch. Now they're coming out, everyone's getting ready for this big football. Mate, he can't find the other boot, and he's going mental. Can't prove he's the best footballer in South London now, can he? So they have the game. We get banged up again for the evening, and then 6 o'clock, you're out again. So 10 to 8, he's walked past my ignorant f***er. He's walked past my door. He went, here, here's your fucking tobacco. I went, thanks very much, Bill. So, of course, just as about it was just time to lock up, I walked past these dudes, pushed these door, and went, here, Bill, you have your fucking boot back now. Pulled the door, he can't get me, can he? He's locked in.
I think he was doing his nut, wasn't he?
What he was going to do to me. Anyway, the next morning, fortunately, I'd been to the urn and he's come up the spur with it. He's broke his own fucking chair. There's an idiot for you. Why break your own chair? and he's come up with a leg, and he keeps coming on, and I just stood there with a jug, and I went, well, keep coming, Bill, because it's going to happen. And he went, f it, this, that, and the other, and he walked up. Anyway, I went to church on the Sunday morning, and a little black fellow I used to go to church with, he went to me, Frankie, he went, you carry on like this, he said, they're going to call you Frank the Baptist. That's how it stuck. That's how it stuck, yeah.
Right. Well, from now on, I'm going to call you Frank the Baptist.
I noticed you didn't offer me a hot coffee.
I'd heard about that already, yeah.
You'd heard about it. You've done your research.
But you get to the end of this journey, you come out of jail, and obviously you reunite with your family. And, if you look back on, your journey, what you've been through, what you've done, do you actually go back and change anything, Frank? Or do you think that you've learned lessons from it? Or if you went back, you just do it all again?
I suspect I'd do it all again. Yeah, I'd do. I know. When I wrote the book,
I just want to ask you a question.
Go on.
When you're not going to tell me now that you've actually become a f***ing priest, are you? You really are Frank the Baptist.
No, I'm keeping away anything extreme. I want nothing to do with it now. No, I think what people may not understand is I hadn't changed. I hadn't changed when I came out. I was the same me. I think, people in prison couldn't understand. They say, how much did you sell the guns for them, Frank? I say, what do you mean sell them for? What, you didn't sell them? And I go, no, it's what I believed in at the time, They couldn't get, because they're villains, and I'm not a villain. So they couldn't understand my logic, right? And you've got to remember that, and I've been asked this, I've spoken at security seminars and different things, security service seminars. You've got to remember, when I went into prison under those circumstances, I was now a loyalist prisoner. Now, in that world, that is a massive badge of honour. That is a massive badge of honour. If you sit around in company now with ex-loyalist prisoners, you don't have to show the respect for it. You've just got it. It's instant, and other people respect you. I always say there's nothing clever in getting caught, all right? Because what about the people who never get caught? I've got more respect for them because they never got caught. But we're the ones that get the accolade for being a loyalist prisoner. So it was a massive thing. So when I came out, I had to justify that, didn't I? I had to justify why I've left my family vulnerable. So why would I back down now? I've got to keep going. And I did for quite a while. And I was still getting visits around the house from Special Branch and asking me to work for them. I was getting stopped regularly at the airports, even family holidays. I had to eventually get in touch with the Home Office, the border agent, saying, look, you're taking the piss here. I don't mind when I'm with my pals going to Belfast or Glasgow. I'll see that as an occupational hazard, but not when I'm on a fucking family holiday. But no, I hadn't changed. It took me a long, long time to change. And I think that was partly when the peace process came about. And I kind of thought, well, this isn't about me. What do people want? What do the majority of people want? I could still see things I didn't agree with, I didn't like. I could still see communities, interfaith communities, not being protected. But that was their decision. And when they decided, no, we want the peace process, and eventually they wanted to, decommission weapons and so on, I thought that's not my decision to make. That's their decision. So when asked now, people say, have you changed? I tend to answer, no, I haven't changed. Circumstances have changed. I'm glad they've changed, and I fully support that change. But I'm not sure I have.
Right.
The same reason why I wouldn't have gone and watched that game in the pub yesterday.
Right.
Because I don't think I've particularly changed. So,
I know this is an odd question, but if the peace process hadn't come about, and if you'd come out and it was all still going on, do you think you could have got quite easily pulled back in?
Well, it was still going on when I came out.
Right.
It took years before it got to that process. So I was still very much involved, and I just was a lot more careful and probably acted more like a conduit, But no, I found it, But look, I take an oath very seriously, and I'd taken an oath, and I abided by that oath. And let's put it this way: I hadn't been home a week, and I was with my wife, and we passed the pub, and there was a singer in the pub singing an IRA song, and she'd gone in the shop, and I ran across the road, kicked the fucking pub door open, and confronted him and said, "I'll give you when the fucking war is over." I hadn't been out a week. And I was out of my old tricks. And my missus come out the shop, look, and the bloke who I knew went to me like that. And I looked round and my wife was on the other side of the road shaking her head. I hadn't even been home a fucking week. And I ate a large slice of humble pie, and I was right to, you know. But I knew I hadn't changed. And I knew and a lot of my mates hadn't changed. Some of them probably thought, I wish he'd just knock it on the head, obviously. But I soon learnt there was another way of helping communities. So we'd collect money, we'd go there. People that were getting petrol bombs thrown, we bought them fire blankets, you know, different stuff. People that wouldn't leave their estate because they had to pass another estate and would get attacked. They was only going to get bread and milk. So we decided to get a container, not like a container lorry, but just a container, have it made into a shop so they could have their own little shop and not into. So we did things like bouncy castles for the kids. We had a fun day thing. We had a football tournament. I turned into a bit of a social worker, you know. So my concern was still there. I was just addressing it in a different way. And eventually, I got an invite to go to the Queen. Hadn't a British monarch hadn't been to Dublin in 100 years, and she was invited. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, and some of us ex-combatants, as they called us, were invited to attend. And that was a state visit. And to this day, I've got this embossed invitation. And a very, very surreal day. Very, very surreal day to see. It was to remember the Irishmen that had fought alongside the British Army during the war and had returned and were alienated by their own people. There was a recognition of that, so it was great. So then you had the Union flag, you had the Irish, you know, tricolour, you had Irish soldiers, you had British soldiers, different representatives, political representatives. You know, their prime minister was there, etc., or the president, I should say. And it was a very surreal day. You know, we was all in a big marquee. So that was some way of recognising that we'd made that transition, if you like. And as I say, and I've spoken at events since then, you know, saying for Christ's sake, let's not go back to them days. You know, I've been to too many funerals, visited too many people in prison. It's not worth it. And the youngsters now think are grasping that. I think the youngsters are grasping that. They've got more in common than they have, you know, against each other. They've just got to work it out between themselves.
Yeah. So what's your plans for the future, Frank? I mean, obviously, we've been talking about making your story into a movie. So obviously we'll keep those conversations going. I mean, I think it's a great story, and I think you've got an amazing journey. You know how this guy from Camden.
It is unusual. I mean, I liken it a little bit, funny enough, to Cass. You know, to Cass Pennant.
Right.
The strange circumstances he grew up in. You know, being adopted by white parents and being embraced by, you know, most of the West Ham fellas, and in his journey. And I can see where that was a fascination for people. Yeah. Because I mean, he was an adversary of mine, but, right. You know, he's all the same team. Yeah. But, and I remember him, he was a bit handy, that's for sure. Yeah. But I could see where there was a film there. I could definitely see someone's going to get hold of that. And some friends had said to me over the years, blimey, Frank, well, your book ain't exactly what is it? You know, the norm, is it? And I take into account I didn't want to write the book. Didn't even want to write the book, you know.
Well, it's a good job you did write the book, because, you know, we wouldn't be sitting here, Frank.
No,
know?
true.
So the book's connected us.
You know, I have followed your career, funny enough. Amazing. You know, I've seen what you've done, and, you know, you've constructed that and you've grown through that, and good luck to you. You know, well done. And the The last two, I've listened to the last two podcasts that you've produced. So finished one of them this morning, and fascinating. And I think you've got your own style. I like the way you talk to people.
Yeah, and your film gets made. And what else? I mean, you're doing public speaking now, like you said.
Yeah, I do some public speaking because I talk about extremism. I talk about radicalization. I talk about rehabilitation. I don't think there's enough of that rehabilitating, to be quite honest. I think they're going about that the wrong way. I advocate youngsters having forums in school so they can sit around and talk to each other, sort out their differences face to face, not out on the street, stabbing each other. I'm an advocate for that. I also I've gone to places where people work in the security industry, and they want to kind of know what leads to certain things. So I've been available for that, sort of corporate speaking, and recently, because I'm sort of retirement age now, and I want to do something completely different, I now do a walking tour. It's called The Dark Side of Camden.
Yeah.
So people tend to know Camden for Camden Lock, the music venues, famous
Coco
bands and all. Yeah, Coco. Well, see, it was the music machine for me. It was Camden Palace music
Palace
machine.
For me.
Was it? Yeah. So you remember Lenny on the door, then?
Yeah, of course.
I never argued with him. He said it was time to go. I said, "What now?" So I go now. And so it's people know that side of Camden, the street art, the street food, the markets, and they genuinely don't know about the dark side of Camden. Serial killers, crimes of passion, witchcraft, terrorism. There's all sorts.
Sounds like so much fun.
Oh yeah, and it's
I bet you're busy.
It is dark. It's not as busy as I'd like to be, and I really enjoy it. I think I've really found my thing, meeting people, telling them things they've not heard, and there's a lot of social history as well. It's not all dark. There's a bit of social history as well, and I thoroughly enjoy doing it, and it's probably what I'd like to do on a permanent basis.
When this podcast goes out, Frank, you're going to be inundated.
I better get some new shoes.
But Frank, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it, because every time I get an opportunity like this, and someone said to me, what do you say when you go on there? And I said, well, you can't win, really. I said, because if you don't tell everybody everything, they go, he's not genuine, is he? He weren't really there, was he? And then if you tell them everything, they go, what a mug. Who goes on a podcast and tells them everything? So you can't win, can you? So I kind of like, well, do you know what? I'll try and, you ask me a question, and I'll try and give an honest answer, and that's the best you can do, really.
Brilliant. Well, Frank, thanks for your time.
Lovely. Thanks
really
a lot.
Good to meet you.
I'm really disappointed you said about wearing my balaclava.
No, I was going to wear it.
And you've not worn your wig.
No, do you know something?
Didn't wear your wig.
When you come back for part 2, when we made the movie, I'll wear the wig, you wear the balaclava. Okay, that's the deal.
I'm not sure if it's you're looking well out of it. But
I could actually wear the wig and the balaclava.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Winning combination. Thanks for tuning in to the Criminal Connection podcast. Frank Portinari, what a fucking amazing guest. Great story. Make sure you get his book. And if you're in Camden and you want to go on that tour, look up The Dark Side of Camden. You can go and see him, meet him in the flesh, and he can show you what's wrong with Camden.
Don't buy an house there.
Make sure you tune in next week. We've got some more exciting guests.